Welcome back to the worst video topic ever, part 4. The title of this video is Who to Blame for Layoffs. Now, when bad things happen, usually we try to figure out who's the right person to blame for the thing that happened. Am I the one to blame for being let go from my company? Am I the one to blame for the situation that happened with my vehicle when I was in a car wreck recently? Somebody needs to be blamed for the situation that's happening. A few years ago, I was part of a mock jury where we were hearing a case that was going to go to court at some point, potentially. And basically what happened is there was an accident, and there was certain circumstances around that accident, and one person was doing something that they shouldn't have been doing, that technically was illegal, and they ended up dying in that process. And the family of that person was suing someone else because they wanted somebody to blame, even though that person really was at fault for what was going on. And it was interesting as we were talking about this situation amongst ourselves as mock jurors, that even though every single person in that jury agreed that that person was at fault, they still wanted to blame someone else. They wanted the family to get something. And so they were willing, most of them were willing to blame this other party, even though they knew and even articulated that they had nothing to do with the situation. They still wanted to blame this other party so that they could give some compensation to this person's family, even though that person was the person in the wrong the whole time. See, we want justice. We want things to be made right. And when someone loses a job and it's not their fault, man, we want there to be justice. We want somebody to pay. We want somebody else to be wrong. We want somebody to blame. And so the question is, when you get laid off or when somebody else gets laid off, who should we actually blame? Well, the easy answer is, well, we just blame the company. And to some degree, that is the correct answer because they're the ones making the choice to lay the person off. But the reality is a little bit more convoluted. And I think it's important for us to understand the many reasons why layoffs actually happen, so that even though we want to blame the company, or maybe want to blame the owner of the company, or the shareholders of the company, or the board, or whoever, maybe a manager, whatever it is, whoever we want to blame, we need to have a more clear understanding of what actually causes these companies to lay people off. One of the simplest reasons why a company would lay a person or multiple people off is it might just be going through the process of growth and trying to get rid of those who are underperforming, those who really are not helping the company grow. If you've got a group of people that's like the top 20% are the ones that are mostly doing all the work and pushing this company forward, then you've got a lot of people who are honestly probably dragging the company down and keeping it from being successful. So by getting rid of those who are underperforming, who aren't quite meeting the standards that you want, you're not just getting rid of dead weight, but you're also increasing revenue that's not spent on those employees. And potentially down the road, you're opening up other jobs to hire others who can come in and do the job better than they were. Another very common reason why companies lay people off is because they're merging with another company, or they're reorganizing the current company to try to cut costs. So a lot of times, if one company buys another company, or if two companies decide to come together, there might be duplicate roles that are being taken up by multiple people, and they just don't need that many people to manage those different accounts or manage those different pieces of the process of development. And so oftentimes what will happen in a merger, or even in a reorganization of a larger company, they're looking for areas where they don't need as many people. And so often that will lead to layoffs. Now, sometimes they'll reorganize and move people around just to keep people so they don't have to lay anybody off. But that is one of the reasons why companies lay off people, because they need to get rid of duplicate effort when they can cover it with one person instead of 2 or 3 people. Now, this third reason is the one that I think most people jump to right away, and that is greed. Now, this could be on the part of an owner or on the part of shareholders. In fact, oftentimes in large companies, you see this is done by the board or by people trying to cut budgets so that they can provide a better return on investment for shareholders or for owners or for partners in that company. This would also be impacting potentially bonuses of upper management and things like that. So there are situations where companies lay people off simply because of greed. However, I really don't think this is the biggest reason most of the time. Most of the time, I think it really comes down to saving money when you don't need all the people that are there. But we do have to be honest, and we have to recognize that there are people out there that are willing to hurt others in order to make more money, either as a shareholder, as an owner, as a partner, as even an employee that gets a bonus structure or something like that. So greed is a reason, probably not the most common reason, not at least as common as people assume, but greed is a reason that people are let go, that are laid off from companies. Another main reason companies lay people off is due to overstaffing. Again, this could be because of a merger or something like that, and they're overstaffed in a particular department. But a lot of times this happens mostly based on the work that's available to do, not necessarily based on the number of people that are there. So if you're in a company and maybe that company is losing clients because they're charging too much or because they're not putting out good enough product, they just may not have enough work from those clients to give everyone to do to make it worth keeping all those people on payroll. So they're really overstaffed for the amount of income that's coming in. They may not be losing clients, but sometimes if companies are not constantly bringing in more work, then they're not able to keep as many people on staff. If they've just got a lot of like maintenance accounts, but they're not bringing in new work, especially for developers, that's really important. And a lot of the agencies that are out there really rely on new and continuously new work. So that could be a way that you see that your company is overstaffed. If you're starting to see less work coming in, that's a pretty good sign that there's going to be layoffs. Layoffs also happen because of other financial problems that have nothing to do with the number of employees that you have or being overstaffed or anything like that. It could be due to things such as lawsuits. If the company that you're working for is dealing with a lot of lawsuits or even just one lawsuit that's costing them a lot of money and lawyer fees and time and effort and issues like that, they may need to save money by getting rid of some employees. After all, employees are typically the number one cost of most companies, especially in the developer industry. So we're really the costly part of most dev companies. So it's important to recognize that it could be something else financially that's the problem. So something like lawsuits or maybe just the increased expenses to their most expensive asset, which is developers. As you know, when you get a job, oftentimes you have benefits with that job. And the reality is that those benefits, they don't stay the same for 10 years. They go up over time. In fact, they go up pretty much every year, it seems like. And so the company may reach a point where they need to let people go just in order to provide benefits to the people that they're able to keep on staff. So there's other financial problems that can come into this process that don't necessarily have to do with how many employees they have or how many clients they have or how much money is coming in. It could just be other things affecting their financial situation. Another possibility could be somebody embezzling from the company. If somebody's stealing money from the company, that's going to eventually cause problems where if they don't know that's what's going on, they may have to start laying people off so that they can try to operate while this person is defrauding them. So it's important to realize that there are other financial situations that impact whether people get laid off or not outside of just what we typically want to blame, which is greed. But the last reason why people get laid off, and honestly, especially with small businesses, the biggest reason people get laid off is simply because the company is going out of business. Obviously, if the company's going out of business, everybody's getting laid off, everybody's getting let go, and unfortunately, that type of layoff usually doesn't leave the door open for somebody to be rehired because the company's not going to be around. You at least have a more broad understanding as to more reasons why a company would let people go other than just being mean or just being greedy. I think it's important that we understand there's a lot more that goes into that process of deciding to let people go and choosing that route. Oftentimes it's the last thing that a company wants to do, because again, employees generally are your most expensive, but also your best asset as a business. And they're the ones that make the business run. So it's a very hard decision for companies to actually lay people off. And I think we need to understand that there's a lot more that goes into that decision than just, hey, we can save a few bucks or I can put a few more dollars in my pocket. There's a lot more that goes into that. And we need to understand that, and we need to realize that and think through that when we hear about people getting laid off or when we go through the process ourselves. Hopefully that helps you understand why companies lay people off. Let's move on to the next part.